Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Jill and Wendy Blackstone. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Jill Blackstone was born in June 1962 and was raised in Bayonne, New Jersey. She had two sisters, Lisa and Wendy. Jill earned a master's degree in communication, moved to Los Angeles, California, and eventually found work as a TV producer. She worked on a number of shows like The Jerry Springer Show, The Rosie O'Donnell Show, and The Tony Danza Show. She produced 165 episodes of The Sally Jessy Raphael Show, 46 episodes of Divorce Court, and 105 episodes of Family Court with Judge Penny. As Jill was building her career as a successful producer, her sister Wendy continued to live in New Jersey. Wendy would often travel to Los Angeles to visit Jill. Due to a condition called Usher's syndrome, Wendy had significant vision and hearing loss. She was not able to work. Eventually, Jill invited her sister to move to California to live with her, which Wendy did. The sisters lived in a 3-bedroom house on Landale Street in the Studio City neighborhood of Los Angeles. Jill purchased this house in 2007 for $930,000. Her mortgage was $5,055 a month. In 2012, Jill declared bankruptcy. In the filing, she indicated that she only earned about $7,400 a month after taxes. This means that 68% of her income was being used to pay her mortgage. Furthermore, Jill was $1.4 million in debt. She owed $122,000 to her sister Wendy. Despite the financial problems, Jill and Wendy ran an animal rescue out of Jill's house called Thumping Tails Animal Rescue Center. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On March 14, 2015, a veterinarian and friend of Jill Blackstone named Tracy Rice called 911 and indicated that Jill had called her and appeared to be having some type of medical issue. Tracy was worried about her friend Jill. When the paramedics arrived at Jill's house, they found her in a bedroom not wearing any clothing from the waist down. Jill told them that she fell while walking on the driveway and did not remember anything. She only woke up because the sun was beating on her neck. Believing that she had a stroke, she called her friend Tracy. From the condition of Jill's house, it was clear that dogs lived there. When the paramedics asked where the dogs were, Jill indicated they may be in the garage, along with her sister Wendy. When the paramedics entered the garage, they found 49-year-old Wendy Blackstone on the floor, dead. There were also 3 dogs in the garage. One of the dogs was dead, and another one would later die. The garage had filled with smoke from a charcoal grill, which was still burning. 56-year-old Jill Blackstone was taken to a nearby hospital, and the police were called to investigate Wendy Blackstone's death. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. 2 pieces of paper were taped on a trash can outside. One piece of paper had Post-it notes on it as well. The message started with the words, "Enter carefully." It went on to offer information and instructions. For example, Jill and Wendy did not want to be resuscitated. The dogs were to be cremated at the expense of Jill's estate. The gas in the house had been turned off, and a garage door opener was mounted to the wall on the left side of the door. In the house, the police found additional Post-it notes in various places, including one that read, "Wendy is loved, know that." On Jill's desk, there was a binder containing the label Last Will and Testament for Jill and Wendy. Computer passwords and the keys to Jill's Lexus were there as well. At first glance, it looked like Jill and Wendy had carried out a terrible plan of self-destruction, but the police were not sure it was that simple. They interviewed Jill at the hospital. She appeared to be happy and was talking about her career. Jill reminisced about the old days and talked about Jerry Springer. The police focused Jill's attention on the night of March 13, wanting to know what happened. Here is the story Jill supplied to them. That night, Jill and Wendy decided to celebrate the life of a beloved dog who had died sometime earlier. Using a charcoal grill and a metal trash can full of charcoal, they cooked burgers outside. As it became colder, the women decided to pull the grill and the trash can into the garage. Jill went back into the house to retrieve marshmallows, Before completing this task, she passed out on the driveway. This story made it seem like Wendy's death was accidental. But what about all those notes found by the police? The notes were consistent with the idea that this was planned, not an accident. Jill explained the notes by saying she had written them a few days earlier, hoping they would give her courage. However, she did not follow through with the plan indicated by the notes. At another point during the interview, Jill made a reference to how she may have snapped, which made it seem like she did follow through. Jill told investigators that due to Wendy's disability, her sister was completely dependent on her. Wendy could not do a lot for herself, including driving a motor vehicle. Over time, Wendy's condition only grew worse. Jill said, "Wendy is consuming my life. I was just tired of taking care of her." An autopsy was conducted on Wendy's body. The results indicated that she died from the combined effects of inhalation of combustion and aprazolam. This is a generic version of Xanax. Jill Blackstone was arrested on suspicion of murder, but then released 2 days later because the district attorney's office decided against filing charges. Prosecutors agreed this was a murder, but they wanted more evidence before moving forward. The investigation continued for 3 years. During this time, Jill moved to Hoboken, New Jersey. On March 22, 2018, a warrant was issued for Jill's arrest. The police looked for her in New Jersey, but were notified by her attorney that she was in a hospital in Baltimore. Jill was having difficulty with migraine headaches. On April 12, 2018, Jill Blackstone was arrested for murder. Eventually, she was extradited to Los Angeles. In a surprising turn of events, Jill was permitted to plead no contest to voluntary manslaughter and animal cruelty. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison and released in March 2024 after serving 6 years. Now moving to my analysis. As suggested by the no contest plea, Jill Blackstone maintains her innocence. Her lawyer indicated that she only pleaded no contest to avoid going to prison. The lawyer was essentially saying that Jill did not want to risk a life sentence. Jill has a number of supporters, including at least some of her family members. They believe that Wendy's death was an accident. Despite the outcome in this case, the state believed that Jill committed murder, and they were prepared to take the case to trial. This brings me to the question, was Jill Blackstone guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that she was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Jill had severe financial problems. Just a few months before the tragedy, in November 2014, she sold her house for $950,000. She and her sister Wendy were allowed to remain there as the new owners sought permission to demolish and rebuild. A few weeks before Wendy died, she sent an email to a friend of hers detailing an incident involving a cookie. Wendy stated that Jill gave her a cookie that tasted funny. After eating it, Wendy felt like she had been drugged. This soporific cookie story makes it seem like Jill was conducting a test run, like trying to see if she could incapacitate her sister Wendy with drugs. Not long before Wendy's death, Jill created instructions for first responders, which she left attached to a trash can and in other places. The plans were consistent with Jill believing that everyone in the house, including the 3 dogs, would be dead. Furthermore, the notes pointed to the garage as the key location and mentioned the gas had been turned off. So Jill would argue that she created this plan involving the garage and presumably some type of open flame. She then gave up on the plan, only to have Wendy end up dead in the garage next to burning charcoal. Either Jill had a tremendous amount of bad luck, or this was a murder. None of the notes were written by Wendy, and none of them contained her signature. An autopsy revealed that Wendy had a generic version of Xanax in her system, but Wendy did not have a prescription for this drug. Jill, however, did have a prescription. Prior to Wendy's death, Jill researched topics on the internet related to a gun, carbon monoxide, and poisoning. Jill acted as if Wendy's death was an accident. However, the barbecue grill that was used in the tragedy had been recently purchased. Furthermore, first responders found the garage door closed. If Jill had passed out while retrieving marshmallows, why would the garage door be closed? Jill made it seem as though Wendy was a burden, as if Wendy no longer wanted to exist. People who knew Wendy said she was future-oriented and not depressed. Furthermore, she was not a burden to Jill. Wendy largely took care of herself. She had significant vision and hearing loss, but otherwise was in exceptionally good health. Every day, Wendy exercised on a treadmill for 45 minutes. Jill told first responders that her sister and the dogs may have been in the garage. Before this, on the phone with Tracy, Jill was asked about the location of Wendy and the dogs. Jill responded, "I think they're dead in the garage." If this was an accident, as Jill indicated, how would she have known this information? Moving to the exculpatory factors, it's technically possible that Jill had a plan to wipe out everyone, but then gave up on this plan only to have an unfortunate accident that killed her sister. That's pretty much it for the exculpatory factors. When considering the evidence in this case, do I believe that Jill Blackstone was guilty of murder? Yes, in my opinion, she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The state should not have offered a plea deal for voluntary manslaughter in this case. I believe what happened here is that the state wanted to honor the wishes of Wendy's family, who did not want Jill to remain in custody, and some of the evidence in the case had been destroyed. Getting a conviction for murder may not have been as easy as originally expected. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. The real mystery in this case isn't really about whether Wendy's death was an accident or not. It seems clear that Jill killed Wendy. Rather, the mystery is about what Jill intended for herself. Did she plan on surviving the entire time, or was this a failed attempt at complete annihilation? This is impossible to know. Only Jill knows this answer. If I had to guess, I would say that Jill had every intention of surviving. This is supported by the fact that she did survive. Jill didn't take responsibility for the murder because she believed her actions were justified. During her interview with the police, she said, quote, "I'm the best person I know. I devoted my life to saving animals and saving people. I'm a good person," unquote. One could argue that Jill was content with her original decision. She really didn't have any regrets. Some people found the outcome of this case to be unsatisfying, like justice was not served. They argued that Jill should have paid the price for murder, not for voluntary manslaughter. She was a producer for shows like Sally Jesse Raphael and Jerry Springer. Didn't she already bring enough pain to the world? How much more should she be permitted to get away with? Other people are more sympathetic to Jill's position. They point out that she cared for her sister for many years and probably viewed the killing as merciful as opposed to a murder. Furthermore, even though Jill evaded a life sentence, she did spend 6 years in prison and ultimately ended up in New Jersey. One could argue that's not comparable to prison, which of course is correct. New Jersey is much worse than prison. Those are my thoughts on the case of Jill and Wendy Blackstone. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Something occurred to me while researching this topic. I don't know if it's connected to what happened in this case, but it's possible. It may be connected. Sometimes people assume that people with disabilities cannot be happy due to the nature of the disability. They look at the person and say, if I had that same disability, I wouldn't be able to live a happy life. Life would not be satisfying. Now, a person is allowed to feel that way, but here's the problem. They take that feeling and project it onto the person with the disability. They use this feeling of their own to convince the other person that the normal way to think about their situation should be consistent with sadness. Another possibility is that plans are made which are not in the person's best interest. Perhaps that is what happened in this case. When people make these assumptions, they probably believe they are using empathy, like they understand what another person is feeling. They may even feel like a good person, perhaps the best person they know. In reality, this behavior is a great example of inaccurate empathy, something that, unfortunately, is all over the place, including in mental health treatment settings. Psychotherapists are supposed to have the ability to use empathy, but not all of them possess this ability. That's why it's important that counseling programs and other psychotherapy educational programs act as gatekeepers. They must screen individuals who don't have the capability of using empathy. The best way to assess a person's level of satisfaction in life is to ask them, not to look at their situation and assume that they would not be satisfied. I think what happens here is that people substitute their own values for the person with the disability. They are looking inside themselves to find answers about another person. Self-centeredness is one trait that leads to inaccurate empathy. Two people can feel differently about the same circumstances. Those who have inaccurate empathy will never understand this.